Gomez, as we mentioned, he is a Republican candidate. He's running for the U.S. Senate. He will be in the special U.S. Senate race. He is 47 years old. He's an investment principal with Advent International. The Cohasset resident is a former Navy SEAL. This is his first run for statewide office. And speaking of running, this is the first. He's run many marathons before, but this was the first time he ran Boston. How well did you do, sir? How was your time?
I finished. I was happy with what I did.
You finished?
There must be a time that's associated with it, though.
We have a picture with you. It certainly has been quite a week here in the Commonwealth. We want to show you the picture. According to our information, you ran it in 4:08.
4:08:03.
Let's be specific. All right, here's the hard part. You finished just about 10 minutes before the bombs went off. Right. And your momentary reflection when those bombs went off, what were you thinking?
Well, I had just seen my wife and 4 kids at the finish line. Right before I finished the finish line, they were a couple blocks off. And so I stopped by and obviously gave them the high fives and hugs and kisses. And then I was going
Wait a minute, they were 2 blocks back. Were they in the area where the bombs went off?
Well, they were initially in the area before the bombs went off. And then after I crossed the finish line, my wife, luckily took the 4 kids and went to a point that we were supposed to go meet, or at least try to get there. And so when I heard the first bomb go off, and I saw the smoke, I could tell where it was coming from, and I could just tell from previous experience in the military, what bomb it was, what kind of bomb it was. And so obviously my first reaction was, I just seen my wife and 4 kids, and you can imagine what was going through my mind. And unfortunately, there wasn't any cell coverage for about 30 minutes.
Right.
So it took
that must have been horrifying.
It is the worst feeling I've ever had in my life.
So it took you about 10 minutes to find your family and figure out what was going on at that point?
Yeah, it took about a little longer than that, but yes, we finally got a text to them.
So terrorism is now again on the front burner of the public's consciousness at this point. If elected to the Senate, what questions do you have for the FBI, which reportedly had information about suspect number 1, the older brother, 2 years ago?
Look, I think the law enforcement in this case did a phenomenal job, and I saw this from the very beginning when I heard the first explosion and I saw the smoke. The first thing I saw was first responders going to the scene. I saw the police officers that were in front of the barricade that I was at the cordoned off area, getting on the phone and directing the traffic and emergency rescue right away. And I think what you've seen the last few days is an amazing coming together of various numbers of law enforcement agencies. And
but should the FBI be questioned more closely about what they knew, when they knew it, before?
Oh, I think we can always go back and see, what the circumstances were and when they questioned this individual a couple years ago. But I wouldn't question what they've done this whole week.
I wanted to ask you, how do you believe that suspect 2 should be tried?
Look, I think the last few days have clearly, reminded us that we live in a very dangerous world where we've got terrorists, some U.S. citizens that are coming here to the United States to try to inflict massive damage to the United States. And I think the last thing we should do right now is to give him right to remain silent and have an attorney.
They have not given the Miranda rights. That's true. Should it be tried as an enemy combatant?
I think right now it's within our legal resources right now to hold him as an enemy combatant, because right now we still need a lot of questions answered, a lot of intelligence gathering that we need to do. We still don't know where he trained, who he trained with, what else might be out there, what other potential attacks that he might be associated with or people he was associated with might be planning right now. So it's within our legal rights to hold him as an enemy combatant, and that's what I was, if I was the U.S. Senator, that's what I would strongly suggest.
If you are a regular viewer of OTR, you know that we normally present an OTR pop quiz, but given the nature of this extraordinary week, you'll recognize that we'll suspend that for a week. We continue. Stay with us.
Suspending the campaigns this past week, a critical week in any election, has dramatically altered an already sleepy race. How do you deal with this? How do you pick it up and try to move to the finish line at this point?
We need to be sensitive, obviously, because of what's happened in the last week. But this is also a very important election. And, people in Massachusetts are going to be focused within the next few days on an election on April 30th, which is going to determine the nominees for the Republican Party and Democratic Party for the Senate. And it's a big event. So we're back out on the road. Today we have 8 events. For instance, I had a couple before I came here this morning, and I've got 6 more planned after this. So we're back on the campaign trail.
But can you push 100% right out of the gate after what's happened, or do you have to be a little slow about it? I mean, after all, everyone is still reeling from this entire week.
Absolutely. You definitely need to be respectful and sensitive of it, and realize that you can't go full board right away. It's going to take a couple of days, I think, to ease back into a full campaign mode.
And then you're not going to have very much time to ease back into it full time at that point, because there's only 8 days left at this point.
Correct. And we'll be doing what we've been doing since day one from then. We're going to be on TV with our ads. We're going to be on the radio, and we're going to be doing as many events as we have that we normally have planned. For instance, we have 8 pretty casual events, but there's 8 events on our campaign schedule today.
I wanted to talk, okay, so let's get into the aspect of being a United States Senator. senator, I was going to say from Massachusetts, but it really doesn't matter, being a United States senator. This past week, the president was angry. The president was visibly angry. This is before the marathon event, when he was dealt a major blow when his compromised gun control legislation was defeated. You supported it, right?
I support it on the surface, yes, what it is. I mean, I'm against an assault weapons ban. I don't believe that you should have a limit on the high-capacity magazines. But I do think that you should close the gun show loophole and tie it to mental health.
And background checks were something you supported.
It's the exact same background check as if you were to buy it from a legal gun dealer. I'm not for a universal background or a universal registry or a universal background check. It's just making sure that whoever buys it from a gun show goes through the exact same background check that they do from a licensed dealer.
I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You're not for a universal background check.
There's just definitions of universal background check. I'm for closing the gun show loophole and making sure that the same background that's done from buying it from a licensed dealer is conducted when you're doing it from internet sales or from a gun show.
From the president's package, how would you change it that perhaps you could get more votes and it could get through both chambers and actually become law?
You know, I saw Senator Manchin from West Virginia and Senator Toomey talking about this, and I think that, you know, they're going to take a little bit of time off, but I think they're going to address what the major concerns were, and I think the major concerns were that there was going to be some national registry. There will not be a national registry that will pass the Senate or the Congress, and I think that once people get comfortable that there won't be a national gun registry, then I think more people will get comfortable.
But if you take the ban against assault weapons out, doesn't that sort of gut the bill, at least in the mind of the Democrats, when you end up losing votes on that side?
I don't think so, because that was a separate vote. There was a separate vote on the assault weapons ban. There's a separate vote on the number of rounds in a high-capacity magazine. The main bill was focused on closing the gun show loophole and tying it to mental health and making sure you have the same background checks that you do from a licensed gun dealer.
North Korea was our biggest problem before this marathon bombing. Has the Obama administration been handling this correctly so far?
This is a critical part of the world, obviously. We have a 30-year-old new leader there. We have a new leader in South Korea, who obviously her family was affected by North Korea through deaths in her family. And there's 28,000 U.S. troops based between North and South Korea. And the North Korea leader has access to nuclear weapons. So I think we did the right thing in terms of sending the bombers there, the B-2s, as well as sending the fighters, of course, in the F-22s. I think what we also need to do also is think about having an aircraft carrier group there as well, because the first question the president's going to ask is where are the carriers? And we need to make sure that we have enough force to deter any potential action that the North Korean leader is going to think about doing.
But no major criticism of the way the Obama administration has been handling it so far.
No, and I think that, you know, we had Senator Kerry go to China. I think we need to do this in a diplomatic way, but also show a strong sense of force. And I think by sending the B-2s and the F-22s was a first sign that we're going in the right direction.
This, as I mentioned, it was your first Boston Marathon. Was it your last Boston Marathon?
Absolutely not. I will run a Boston Marathon until I can't walk. It was an amazing experience, obviously.
That has been the overwhelming response I have heard. Stephen Lynch looked me straight in the eye and said, next year it's going to be twice as many people and it's going to be better than it's ever been.
Absolutely. It's, you know, I think you saw the worst of Boston that day, but you also saw the best. And I think that next year you're going to see, you know, whether they cap it at a certain number, you're going to see a lot of people that are considered bandits running that marathon, just in honor and just showing that, you know, you can't hurt Boston, and this is just another way of showing that Boston is stronger than it was a week ago.
Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us this morning on this special edition of OTR. We appreciate it. Remember, the election is a week from Tuesday, despite the primary, and then, of course, the final and the special election will be held later in June. Best of luck to you in that event, sir. Folks, thank you for joining us this morning on behalf of Janet Wu and myself and our crew. Thank you for watching this morning, and remember, every Sunday we go on the record.
This portion of On the Record is sponsored by UMass Boston.
At UMass